initiatives on our website, the All Things Alfalfa section. Chris originated that. So Chris, look forward to a couple of updates you are going to give us.
Thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here today. And Ray asked me to give a couple updates today. And the first one is on our recovery process at the research station. I think most of you know on December 10th, Western Kentucky was impacted by an F4 long track tornado. And the research station was not grazed by it, it was directly impacted by that tornado. And I want to talk just a little bit about some of the progress we've made in the recovery. The important thing about the tornado in the research station is that nobody was hurt, and we did have about a dozen people on the research station at the time that it did hit. 35 of our 59 structures on the research station were completely destroyed. And I've myself never seen anything like it. The day after that tornado, I have never seen devastation like that. We were very fortunate that our stakeholders and our community really rallied around the research station and the other people that were impacted in the community. So there's probably not a finer place to live than Western Kentucky. You can imagine with 165 cows after a tornado like that took out about 11 miles of fence, what a chaotic scene that was. And we had no water for the animals and no fences. And people really came from the community to help us get through that initial 3 to 5 days after the tornado and a number of injured animals. So almost immediately after the tornado occurred, of course, you know, as a university, we always form committees. We formed a rebuild committee almost immediately and started to think about how we were going to rebuild the research station. It was never a question that we were going to rebuild the research station. It was just how we were going to do it. And what we determined was that the most cost-effective strategy was to leave the main building where it was. So the main building was completely destroyed, but we're going to rebuild it in that same footprint. Now the foundations have to be removed from the main building, but it will go essentially back in the same spot and be about the same size with some minor modifications. Now the insurance was good to let us combine some older structures and instead of having, say, 3 old sheds, actually rebuild one larger shed that would be a lot more functional for us. We're going to modify the entrance to Highway 91 a little bit. And then we've kind of developed an overall master plan, not just for the recovery, but looking forward to the next 25 or 50 years as we move forward. And our goal is to have the research station rebuilt by our 100th anniversary, which is 2025. It's going to be a pretty aggressive timeline. Things seem to move a little bit slower than you would like when you get the university and an insurance company involved. But that's our goal. So one of the amazing things that happened, so that happened in the fall, in December, and that next year, even though we had almost zero infrastructure, we probably had, I would estimate, between 60 and 80% of our research activity continued. So that's a real testament to the staff and the faculty at the research station. So just a little bit on the timeline. Immediately after it happened on December 11th, we had the preliminary evaluation take place at the research station, and we started immediately with data recovery. So at the research station, we're in the business of producing data, so one of the most important things we have is that data. So we immediately started to after the buildings were stabilized, try to recover that data from everyone's computers. Another good reason to back stuff up in the cloud if you don't back your data up in the cloud. So then we started field cleanup, and my technician Brittany and I were asked to be in charge of that field cleanup. And it was a daunting task. I remember when we walked into the first field, it looked like it had picked up a housing development in Princeton and dropped it in that field. And we worked for essentially 3 months straight every day picking up debris from crop hay fields and pastures at the research station. Backbreaking work, and was kind of cathartic, and it was good to get together, and we had lots of volunteers, so that kind of raised the morale too. But it had to be done, and it was done with 5-gallon buckets and trailers and walking across fields and picking up anything from the size of the palm of your hand to maybe as big as this stage, depending on the field. Most of the fields we had to go over more than once. So fence repair started in March, and we've got most of our fencing actually done. We're coming towards the end of it. We had about 11 miles of fence that were destroyed during the tornado, and that's been replaced with the majority of it. We've got some temporary structures on site, large canvas buildings where we can store equipment that we're replacing in the meantime before our equipment storage is rebuilt. We've had trailers come on, office trailers. So we went for, I guess we moved into our office trailers started in August. Well, actually later than that, September, I think we moved into our office trailers. Essentially, they're 8 plexus, so 8 single wide trailers kind of put together. They're not bad. I mean, they're not as nice as a real building, but it's nice to have some place to sit down in and get out of the weather and have a decent internet. One of the things that we lack in Caldwell County is decent internet when we get outside the city of Princeton. So that was a real challenge for working at home. That's our 2 office complexes there. The 2 semi-trailers are actually clean labs that our plant pathology unit is using. So that's for culturing and so forth of different pathogens. A little bit on our site plans. So this street right here is Hopkinsville Street or 91. This is our main entrance. That came down and curved around. This is going to go straight now. This was the original experiment station building. It is going back, same footprint, but it's going to be a different purpose. So originally it was offices. Now it's going to be a dormitory for students. So we're pretty excited about that because we really didn't have really nice housing for students at the research station. We were putting the students up in old farmhouses that had existed on the station for 50 or 100 years. Rebuilding the farm shop, it's moving a little bit. We're rebuilding chemical storage. I'll show you some design plans for that as we move forward. And then we combined 3 equipment sheds into 2 larger, more functional equipment sheds on this side of 91. This is on the opposite side of 91, so 91's right here. This was kind of Andy Bailey's tobacco area here, and it blew all of his tobacco barns over, of course. And so we're rebuilding several of those tobacco barns, and then we'll rebuild some smaller experimental ones as we move forward. There was a lot of smaller sheds here, maybe 9 or 12 of these really small sheds, and we're rebuilding some larger equipment storage here. The insurance allowed us to combine those small sheds and rebuild some more functional, larger ones. And probably the highlight of this is something called the field processing building. So before this, we didn't have a really good place to work on samples. And we came up with this idea of rebuilding the building a field processing building where we could bring plant samples in, maybe that had some dirt on the roots, process those samples, do botanical separations, dry samples, grind samples. So this is going to be a real addition to the research station and improve the functionality of the overall research station. This is the main building. The main building is going to go back pretty much as it sits with some modifications. But for insurance purposes, to be considered like for like, which was really important because when we replaced a building like for like, the insurance company, which has been very good, pays 100% of the rebuild cost. So it was important it went back in the same place. And then we were able to move our greenhouse complex from across the road closer to the main building, which will be very helpful for functionality in the future. And then this is the beef unit, which was also impacted. So it destroyed 2 barns that had sat here, and we're rebuilding a feeding structure here and then a storage unit on the end of this for commodity feeds. We also destroyed 3 silos here that were upright that we were still using, and they were replaced with a silage pad, and then we're going to be using bags to bag silage with on the silage pad, which is going to improve the functionality for our beef cattle unit. If we ever want to test different types of silage, it's easy to bag a small quantity of silage for a research project. So I'll go through these pretty quick, but this is the original experiment station building. Same footprint, except it's going to be designed to house students now. So we'll be able to house 10 students in this structure. One of the neat things they did when they designed this was they built it so that we could add modules onto the end of the structure. So if some money became available and we wanted to expand this by 4 students, we can add a module out this way. This is the field processing building. Our field crew is going to work out of this end of the building. We're going to have seed storage, a carpentry area, and then some storage that will be shared storage that's both heated and no heated or air conditioned. And then a place for dryers and grinders. Before the tornado, we just really didn't have a good place to dry samples and grind samples. So this is going to be a big addition to the research station. And then this is probably the biggest upgrade that we're making is our chemical storage. We had a chemical storage area that was, well, I'm not sure how old it was, but it was really, really old and in not meeting our current needs. So this was expanded, and we're going to have some ATV storage in here for ATVs with sprayers so they don't freeze during the winter months. We got some cage storage in here for products, and then a nice mixing and wash area in this chemical storage area. And then new signage for the research station. When I came, one of the things that I noticed first thing was that our signage was not as good as I would have liked, so we've made some improvements in the signage that will be out in front of the research station. So that's kind of where we're at right now. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We'll be moving forward. Today I'm actually missing a open house. Not a lot to see yet, but it was an opportunity for people to come and hear about what's happening at the research station in terms of the rebuilding process. So Brittany, could you change me over to my next presentation?